Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Business Roundtable discussion about business continuity. Very important and challenging issue facing businesses, both big and small. I'm Russell Ray, editor of the Journal Record, and joining me today is our expert team from Cox Business to discuss this very important issue. Let's go around the table and introduce each other, starting from my right. Eddie, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Russell. My name is Eddie Blankenship. I am the Director of Sales for the Oklahoma City market for Cox Business.
I'm Roger Oaxaca. I'm with CBSS. That's the Cox Business Security Solutions.
Fantastic.
Nathan Flo with Cox Business. I'm with the RapidScale division, which is a newly bought company by Cox, and I'm a cloud solutions engineer.
Outstanding.
And I'm Jamie Anderson. I'm a sales engineer that supports the sales team here at Cox.
So, Eddie, we hear the term business continuity quite a bit nowadays. Tell us a little bit about business continuity and what it means and why it's so important.
Yeah, so, the question is your business ready to survive and continue operating during a disaster? For many people, that continuity plan is in place or it's not, but it has to be addressed at some point. Business continuity is the planning and preparation of that a company undertakes to ensure that the organization and its employees will have the capability to operate during a disaster. Those of us in Oklahoma know what that means, right? So we've experienced those on multiple levels. We have tornadoes and ice storms and even flooding. So fires out in California, they've devastated the western states, and at the end of the day, the business crisis, the pandemic, workplace violence, events and a disruption of your business, that inhibits your operating, how you operate. So, and even in today's world, we have cyber threats. So cybersecurity's become a huge piece of how we continue doing business during those events. So it's important to remember that companies, both big and small, need a plan. And what is that plan? What are you going to put in place to prevent these events from happening, or what are you going to do when these events do happen as a business? So you might recall back in 2017, the tornado in Tulsa on Sunday afternoon.
I remember that.
One of the buildings damaged was the Remington building. And, it's still not reopened. So FEMA had released a study that 40% of small businesses that are impacted by a disaster don't reopen. And so that's a big number. Mm-hmm. So having that business continuity plan is important, and it increases the odds of survival during one of those events. So that's, business continuity.
Yeah. And you mentioned tornadoes, you mentioned floods, you forgot to mention earthquakes here in Oklahoma, which is we're becoming a hub for earthquakes as well. You mentioned a high number of businesses don't reopen after disasters such as these because they don't have a plan for business continuity. So what are some examples of the tools and solutions that can help a business survive a disaster or an unexpected event like a big earthquake or a big tornado or flood?
So the biggest thing is to have that plan in place, right? So we have consultants. There's companies that do this. Of course, Cox Business is one of those that specialize in creating these plans. Companies have specific needs, specific things. They're in certain areas that increase the level of impact depending on what that disaster is, cyber threats, etc. So we try to help companies identify those. Everybody wants to see what's essential, what's time critical, what are the things that are important to that business and staying open, right? So we have companies that have call centers. We have companies that have remote employees that can continue to work. How do they continue to work if they can't get access to the systems in the business? And Does it have to go into the cloud? Where do we place things? And so there's a lot of things that have to go into that. So you put a lot of analysis into it. We do a lot of research, try to understand what those expectations are. But with any disaster, companies' main priority is to protect the employees.
Yeah.
Right. So to ensure their safety. And I think the purpose of the discussion today is we're going to discuss tools, things that can help a company keep their data records safe and accessible after a disaster, tools that keep communications up and running, keep the business operational for both not only the employees but their customers, right? As a service provider, we want to talk about the role technology takes that plays in that. And it's in both big and small businesses. So we're here to try to help and mitigate the variety of business threats that are in the world today.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. Technology plays a much greater role in how you conduct business, both big and small, nowadays. So in terms of technology, where is the first place to start when talking about business continuity? Where do people start?
So it's really the chicken and the egg, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a right or wrong place to start, but you have to start. Where we feel and what we specialize in is it's your communications. So again, it's whether you communicate with your employees or you're communicating with your customers. The business has to you have to keep the business going.
Yeah.
So when an event occurs that severely impacts the way your company does business, communicates with employees, with customers, anything that's critical of nature, we have many different options. And Jamie Anderson, which is an expert in our IP telephony, he plays a huge role in the business continuity plan that we do for a lot of customers. Jamie, can you explain a little more of IP phones?
I'm visiting with customers every day regarding this disaster recovery, business continuity, especially some of my past experiences related to voice. So there's two layers that the customer has to decide where they fit, because one solution doesn't fit everybody.
Yeah.
So the first is, how important is your voice in your business need? There's a lot of customers that are traditional voice. The customer for them calls in, they make an order, they fulfill that order. Or the service companies are really huge in that. On the flip side, there's a lot of software engineers that voice is not important. So there's a range that you want to work through. Traditionally, the phone system would be in the building that the customers had. With our technology advancements, we've been able to move that out of the building into what's called a hosted platform. So is that important? Do you need to move that out of the building? Most of the time, that's a good choice, because that gives you flexibility. In the event of a tornado, of an earthquake, of fires, you now are not worrying about that infrastructure in the physical building. You can send your workforce remote, and they have the ability to take and receive calls in conjunction with some data that goes along with that to give them connectivity back to their services. So that's really important. The second layer is, how important is the voice quality of those calls? So one is mobility, the second is quality. So you can have mobility at a very inexpensive layer with services that go over the internet. That doesn't fulfill a lot of customers' needs. They need that high quality voice, those service companies that don't want to ask people to repeat what they said. So they're service providers that provide a direct connection from a customer premise and the remote to their hosted platform. And that's really important if reliability and clear communication is important to them.
Nice.
And traditionally, a lot of those people that need that reliability and mobility would put their services into a data center that they house, because it's hardened. It's got that near 100% uptime. But now they've got that flexibility of, I don't have to maintain that. I can move it to a hosted platform, which goes really well on the data side as our infrastructure is getting more availability to move into remote services like cloud services. So those paired together work really well together. And Nathan has a lot of background in how to move from that environment of a data center or on-premise server solution, both voice and data, to an off-site cloud scenario.
Nathan?
It's my turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think DR, business continuity, or disaster recovery, you always have the big things, right? Earthquakes, tornadoes, flooding, or what have you. But there's more to it than just that. There's the smaller things that people don't think about, which could be coming to the office and water pipes burst, right? You never foresee that. Weather is usually more predictable, or a fiber gets cut. You have no internet access, right?
That's right.
If you have several people that are in your office that work out of that office, how are they now going to do things that are online? Right. So what is that contingency plan? And I think a lot of companies are more reactive than proactive in how they approach business continuity. Usually, it's at the bottom of the list of things that we need to accomplish with an organization. But they don't think about the smaller things. There's also attacks that happen within organizations, meaning you have a user that maybe clicks on an email they shouldn't be clicking on, and all of a sudden it installs an application on that computer, and then whoever that person is that has that access to that application now has control of their machine and now have access to their internal network and installs something on their server and brings that down. And those are things you just don't foresee. So the question is, how do you mitigate those instances? But also, I think people don't think about how much downtime can I afford, right? Can I be down for an hour? Can I be down for a week? And they don't really put the numbers to that downtime cost. And there's some industry averages that are out there, and that dollar number, depending on the size of the industry, is pretty huge. Whether you're a Fortune 500 company or you've got less than 5 employees, the smaller things that can occur other than a disaster can take you out of business as quickly, and it can be just as detrimental if you're a large organization or a small organization. So working with companies to do assessments to figure out what are your downtime requirements, how long have they even discussed that? And most companies haven't. So to be able to go in and talk through that with the customers and find out what kind of downtime can you afford, and then from there you can decide how much money you're willing to spend to be up and running, right? It's like insurance in a way. If you want to spend a whole lot of money on insurance, you can have all kinds of coverage, but if you're not willing to spend very much money, then you're going to have a small amount of coverage, and then when that disaster occurs, or you need to be up and running, whether it's a disaster or just something small, is it going to be able to save your business, right?
Is it safe to say that having a business continuity plan in place, it's more than peace of mind, isn't it? I mean, inevitably, something's going to happen. We've been talking about natural disasters, and you mentioned several disasters that aren't natural disasters. Inevitably, a business is going to have a situation like that. Right?
You're absolutely right, and I know of other customers who had people managing their IT department who have access to certain data that they probably shouldn't have access to, but they manage it so they can read certain emails. For example, I had a gentleman that was reading, it was a law firm, was reading some emails between attorneys and found out they were going to fire him. And so he was reading all their emails, and he decided that, all right, if you're going to fire me, I'll just go ahead and take out all your data. You basically wipe it out, and then I'm going to quit. And he sent an email to the attorney saying, you're not going to fire me, I'll show you. And the thing that people also don't consider is reputation. If you're a prestigious law firm, do you want that getting out? Right? So you can litigate it, but now it becomes public record. Right? So how do you prevent certain things like that occurring as well? A lot of people just don't think about.
Could be a man-made issue like that. Could be a cyber threat,
Exactly.
attack.
Whether it be an external cyber threat, right, or it could be internal with just an unassuming user. So you almost have to protect the user from themselves. And so there's certain things that you can put in place to help users protect themselves in a way that also protects your business.
I see.
Yeah, I think we see more more of our customers are reactive instead of proactive when it comes to business continuity, right? So
Yeah, unfortunately, IT expenditures are usually not on the forefront of a business, right? That's just an expense. Why do I have to do it? What can I do to make more money? Well, if you don't allocate dollars appropriately for those IT preventative measures for business continuity, DR, you could be out of business and you're not going to make any money at all.
Yeah.
So it's what we deal with a lot is an overstressed, overworked IT person that probably could use help, right? Another employee, but not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to augment those services. And a lot of times what happens is these guys get so bogged down on their day-to-day operations, they're unaware of new technologies that could help the company, right? So it's up to companies like us to go in and educate them on the different solutions that are out there. And then you got to work within their budget constraints, right? And say, listen, if you want this particular service, it's going to cost X and it'll give you everything you need.
Yeah.
You don't have the budget for it, we can do this, but here's the risk associated with that, and here's what you're not going to get. And if you're comfortable with it, then let's move forward.
There are several levels of investment a business can
absolutely.
choose, several options
Absolutely.
to fit their needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people say, you know what, I get to be up and running within 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right? And to do something like that, that's not an inexpensive. It's not real cheap to do that.
I see.
Or somebody say, I could afford to be down for a day.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we got other options there. So there's a lot of different ways. I hate this phrase. There are multiple ways to skin a cat, but there is, and it just depends on what you're willing to afford to do that.
yeah, so a lot of those attacks come from within, right? So we talked to you brought that up. That's a big piece of it. From schools, DDoS attacks, students. For pennies on the dollar, they don't want to take a test. They end up making sending out a quick email. The next thing you know, the school system's shut down, and they don't do testing that day. So there's all different types of threats that we have to look at, and we try to help customers understand. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. So being able to, you hate to be Big Brother, but you kind of have to be.
Yeah.
There's a disgruntled employee can really disrupt your business, whether it be on the computer or other certain things. That's kind of the nice thing that with what Cox is, we have a plethora of services. One is surveillance is another big one, right? To be able to go in and say, all right, what's going on with the organization? Do we need to watch the cash register, or we just need to watch certain internal things? And it could just be from a insurance loss perspective. If you have a warehouse worker and they hurt themselves and they decide to sue, you got to be able to prove.
Surveillance detection, I think that's where you come in, Roger.
That is where I come in. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So with the customer wanting to protect their investment when it comes to security and surveillance, we step up our game and we basically show the customer we have options A, B, C, or D. So to allocate whatever it is that you're wanting, we can go in and be like, hey, we can do this for this, but if you're wanting this, we're going to have to change some things around. So with the surveillance part and what he brought up as far as floods, we can actually have sensors go off and let you know that there's an issue at your business, so that way you can prevent that from happening or even fix it before it even gets worse, by destroying the servers or anything else inside the business that's going to hurt you.
This empowers a business or a school to be more proactive, as I think
Right,
you
yeah,
said.
very proactive. And then, as far as the surveillance goes and watching and being your IT department, we come into play with that as well. So by sending you alerts when, an employee disarms the system and it's a disgruntled employee, you can go in on the video feed and be like, oh, well, he's not supposed to be here. Why does he still have, an alarm code? Oh, it looks like he's using James's code, but it's Kevin that's actually disarming the system. So,
I see.
yeah.
I see. Roger, can you talk to us in general terms about stop loss prevention and insurance fraud?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So with insurance fraud and stop loss prevention, so if an employee wanted to sue a company, either because of slip and fall or something happened at the work and, they don't have any proof, this video surveillance can actually go in and be like, hey, this is not what happened, even though you're saying this, it's two separate stories, but we actually have footage here that we can actually uphold in court, and the judge can't throw it out because we watermark our surveillance cameras, so that way it'll hold up in court and the judge can't throw it out. So it helps. I actually have a customer that just went through that recently. He had an employee staying at the business sleeping there and having, people come over and spend the night, and it was just weird, and he had no clue that this was going on, and he was also clocking in and staying on the clock the entire time. So he was just wondering, he's like, why is this guy's, why am I paying him so much when he's only going to be here, here, and here? When we installed the surveillance systems, he had noticed that, and he nipped it in the bud, fired the guy, and, the guy tried to come back and say, well, it was a wrongful, loss or whatever, and I had this, and this going on, and, so he was able to get the footage and take it to court, and the guy lost the lawsuit, so.
I see. Well, it sounds like this is a necessary investment for both businesses and all types of institutions in today's modern technological world. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the cost and the options there? Are there packages available for all types of levels of investment?
We can start there and with the communication side, but we all like to collaborate together, to come up with a solution that's going to work best for the customer with, surveillance, your internet and phone, your cloud services. So we just try to collaborate and be like, okay, well, this is what the customer is wanting. This is what they're looking at. Let's go ahead and present them this package because this is going to suit them the best.
And Roger's really spot on. I've worked with a lot of customers that they want to get to that top tier of business continuity, knowing that the series of events that could happen, they're protected.
Yeah.
But they have to take that in baby steps. So they may start with backups that go to the cloud, and that may be $100 a month. They may start with moving their phone system out of their premise to a hosted solution. That may only cost them $200 more a month.
Yeah.
They may then add the surveillance. There's a few more dollars, and you can do that incrementally. It's not this is what I need. I'm going to have to readjust my entire budget plan to afford this. Yeah. We don't need to do that. We can take that step by step. And we've been able to help a lot of customers do that. And they've survived those situations. And it's really neat to look back and talk with them and say, hey, how did the plan work? Where do we need to go next? And it's really neat when they say, no, it worked perfectly. We're stable where we are. All of our workers had a minimum downtime. We were able to get back online, and we're doing business. And that's what we love to hear.
Yeah, so basically saving customers more money on the long view of it instead of the short view and be like, oh man, I got this big bill to pay, but in all honesty, at the very end, it's like, oh man, they actually saved me a lot of money.
And that's how you have to look at it, I guess, as a long-term investment in your business. What about the level of demand? Are you seeing a lot of demand for business continuity services?
Well, and I think my approach to working with the customers, looking at business continuity, disaster recovery, is not necessarily looking at it as hey, this is something that I have to have, and if something happens, then it kicks in and starts working right away. There's things that we can do to help a customer make the DR plan be more of a production environment, meaning why not take the desktops that you have in your office that's got all your applications, your data, put that in the cloud, and now you have an instant environment that you can use right away, right? You're replacing outdated equipment, you don't have to refresh those computers, and it's in the cloud, so now you have an instant DR plan. So let's just say you can't go to the office. Well, if your desktop is in the cloud, you can work from anywhere, as long as you can get on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Or you use what's called dumb terminals or zero client type devices where, Chromebook's a perfect example of that. There's no data that resides on that, right? It's just a way to get to your data that's in the cloud. If that laptop is destroyed or lost or stolen, it doesn't matter. There's no data on it, so you don't have to worry about data breaches, which is a whole other side of continuity and DR. If somebody hacks in and retrieves sensitive information, HIPAA compliant type data, if you will, or credit card information, that doesn't reside on that box anymore, right? And they're inexpensive. If you don't, like I said, if it gets destroyed, you don't need it. But now you have an instant DR plan, but also a production environment. So in a business owner's mind, I'm paying something per month, but I know that it's not insurance. It's something I need on a day-to-day basis, and then we help from there. So,
Yep. So it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
so that's kind of how we approach it, twofold. What can we do to help keep a production environment up and running no matter what? And if there's other certain DR, business continuity needs that you have, then we can add those to it as well.
I see.
So.
I see. And does it lead to reduced costs in the long run? I imagine that business, big company, could cut back on internal expenses with a plan in place. Is that accurate?
Usually you get more efficiencies out of streamlining your services. You take a lot of the burden from a stressed out IT person who's probably looking to quit to go somewhere else because he's working 70, 80 hours a week. Yeah. You can't cost justify hiring another employee,
right.
But you can look at outsourcing some of your IT services or the DR piece of it instead. That was, now you've got a service that's 24/7. You don't have to worry about HR issues.
Yeah.
Right. You got a guy that's not going to be on vacation. That's all been outsourced to a third party.
Yeah.
To help augment that IT guy. Now he's not working 70 hours. He's working 40. Plus he can focus on other projects to streamline the organization.
I see.
And it really helps small business too, because in years ago you had to invest in these expensive servers, expensive phone systems, expensive security. Now that we've brought these experts available to the public in kind of a piece of the pie scenario, they can now take a sliver of that pie to get the expertise and be able to focus on their business without this huge expenditure. What used to be a capital expenditure is move into an operating cost.
Yeah.
And we see that not only in small business, but in small city governments. They want that operating cost because getting capital investment from bond or whatever else they get it from is really hard to get.
Yeah. And so we've talked a lot about natural disasters, man-made disasters. What about the threat of as we add more technology to our businesses, the threat of cyber attacks becomes increasing as well. Does that apply to a business continuity plan as well?
Absolutely.
Cyber threats?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's more and more people are using. People use email. Email's so critical to companies' businesses. So obviously that's an easy target, right, to go after. And there's really no people. No one's really getting educated on what you should and shouldn't be doing with email. You think it's email? It's real simple.
Yeah.
So over the last few years, there's been companies that have come out with cybersecurity awareness services training, right? So take something that's very basic, give them modules that they can utilize, over a 1-year period, a campaign, and educate them on those services. So you don't have employees mistakenly clicking on things they shouldn't be clicking on. And then implement services that use artificial intelligence, AI, to predictively look at newer threats coming out and stop them before they get to the employee so they can't click on them.
Does that plan to protect against cyber threats, does that plan differ from business to business? Does it need to be tailored to the needs of that specific business? I know there are standards out there, but government standards, but just meeting the government standards won't protect a business alone. Doesn't it need to be business specific to that business? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'd say you have more companies are going to have to be more proactive due to certain compliances that are in place. So, for example, if you handle credit card data, right, PCI compliance is really huge. How do you secure that credit card information? Other companies may do credit card transactions, but they don't store that information, right? So they're not going to be as compliant. And then when you start talking about specific industries like healthcare, financial, legal, the type of information they handle is going to be more customized to what they need. Where if you have someone that's in retail or oil and gas, that they probably don't have to be as secure from a compliancy standpoint. But they'll tell you too that if somebody was to hack in and get a hold of information or shut them down where they couldn't be in production, then that's going to be just as critical.
I see.
So you're right. Every customer is different, and you just got to consult with them and figure out what do you want to accomplish, and then obviously it all wraps around budget. What are they willing to spend?
All right. Very good. Well, I've read a lot about hosted events and hosting. Jamie, can you tell us a little bit about what hosting is and what that means?
Yeah, really that is taking the critical infrastructure that is normally in your premise and moving it to really somebody else's data center that they call the cloud.
Yeah.
So in the world of telephony specifically, when they say a hosted platform, that takes the brains of the phone system and your voice solution and puts it in a data center that is secure and replicated and always going to be up. What that allows is when the customer, not just in a event that interrupts business, it gives them flexibility. So a hosted platform where we have IP phones on the desk, that allows those IP phones to be super great quality from the premise to the hosting location, and it gives flexibility to take that phone from your normal brick and mortar to, a home office,
Nice.
to on the road, and you don't even have to take the phone itself. The applications that sync with the IP systems that we have can be deployed on a laptop. It can be deployed on a tablet, and most frequently on a smartphone. And I use that day in and day out.
Yeah.
When somebody calls my number, it rings my desk phone and the app on my mobile phone. I can return calls from my mobile phone, not showing that number, but my office number. So they know who's calling and what it's about. And so that gives both flexibility in day-to-day and in the event of an interruption of service. It really excels in companies that are multi-site. Traditionally, multi-site was really expensive and hard to interconnect. Now, it's seamless.
Yeah.
You have one phone in a location or 100 phones in a location. They all talk to each other from site to site, and it's really easy. And that plays into the data world as well then. You're going seamless on your voice.
Yeah.
You can go seamless on your data.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, more and more applications these days are going to the cloud.
Yeah.
So think of accounting packages, accounting software that you traditionally would have installed on your server in your office is now a cloud-based product. Trucking companies utilize cloud-based software to track packages and track their the trucks that they have out on the road. Architectural firm. I mean, everybody's pushing more and more applications to the cloud, going more to a recurring expenditure model.
Yeah.
Because now you don't have to do upgrades,
Yeah.
right, to services that you have on premise. The traditional way of buying a server, upgrading it, constant maintenance, and then in the next 3 to 5 years, you're replacing it, migrating to something newer and better. In addition to that, you're having to buy something that you have to increase computing and resources because you want this thing to last 5 years. So you can't buy for something you just need now, you need for the next 5 years. So to make that transition of CapEx to OpEx type of expenditures and go in the cloud, you can buy just what you need.
Yeah.
All right, and in trying to incorporate more production related items, right? Accounting, HR, or just inventory type stuff. Once you move it to the cloud, you're kind of getting into an instant DR, instant business continuity model, as well as day-to-day production type services.
Really sounds if you have the right business continuity plan in place, it really allows the business, the institution, bottom line, be more flexible and more nimble to adapt to all sorts of situations that could come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Especially with remote workers.
Yeah.
It's more and more people are, offering more flexible working hours. The younger generation, the millennials, really like to be able to be flexible where they work, from home, a coffee shop, or on the beach. If you can offer that to them, then that, and attract the better talent because you give them those options. That's a good thing. And then at the same time, you have to be sure and secure how they connect.
Exactly.
Right. You got to kind of be the big brother of your company to make sure, all right, I'll let you work from wherever you want, but I'm not going to give you 100% of the controls. Because another big issue is BYOD, right? Bring your own device.
Yeah.
Is really attractable. People really like their Macs, right? Or they like their Surfaces, right? So do you let them do that? Do you let them bring their own device in and potentially have them?
What are the security threats,
What
right?
are the security
Yeah.
threats,
What do they have on their device that they're bringing onto your network?
Exactly. So there are mechanisms, there are applications and software and security measures you can take in place to help mitigate those and you know, keep those reduced.
That's a great example. That is a big trend in the way we do business nowadays. More workers are working remotely, and plans like this will help employers manage that new aspect in business. Interesting, fascinating. Eddie, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, you know, as a partner in the metro area and business communities, in not only Tulsa but Oklahoma City, Cox Business is constantly investing in local support, engineering, our infrastructure. You know, infrastructure that's uniquely positioned to deliver reliable technology solutions. And of course, this includes providing business continuity, solutions that help companies be prepared to survive disasters of all shapes and sizes, as we spoke about today. So, business continuity is serious stuff. This is something that should be top of mind with all businesses, and that's why we are committed and a dedicated partner in keeping companies' IT structure, infrastructure, and mission-critical data safe and secure as possible.
To add to your point, you know, Cox has always been traditionally known as a telecom, voice, data organization, and to Eddie's point of looking out for our customers, protecting infrastructure, business continuity, you know, they're doing that with the voice side, the internet piece of it. But to take it a step further, Cox has gone through and acquired a company that's been in the cloud space for the last almost 11 years. It's an acquisition that occurred last August. And so this company is called RapidScale. They're based out of California, but they utilize 6 data centers here in the U.S. as well as overseas. And from that point, they've now entered into the cloud business, if you will, which encompasses business continuity, taking production environment that's in the cloud and having it up and running all the time, providing SLAs around uptime when it comes to the infrastructure, as well as SLAs when it comes to internet connectivity. So that acquisition, I think, is really going to help Cox propel and really help their customers long term, other than just one component being, you know, telecom, voice, data. Now you've got the other gamut, if you will, of continuity services.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. We've covered a lot of information in a short amount of time. I want to thank all of you for joining me for this fascinating discussion. Thank you, Eddie, Roger, Nathan, Jamie. Thank you so much, and we thank everybody out there who's watching right now. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.